Good morning, guys. Happy Saturday and welcome back to Basic Fundamentals F-15C, where today we will finally be getting into the long-awaited weapon systems, beginning with the big slammer, the AMRAAM, also known as the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, or AIM-120. The AIM-120 has two different variations of it. You have the Bravo and the Charlie. For DCS World purposes, the biggest thing I'm going to tell you for a very basic difference between the two is the Charlie tends to be more effective at the longer range, while the Bravo tends to be better at short range. And by short range, I'm referring to the 8 to 12 mile range. However, both are extremely capable missiles in DCS. The Charlie's self-active radar tends to be a little bit more effective, but again, both incredibly effective missiles. Getting right into it, the F-15C can carry up to a total of 8 AMRAAMs on all of its stores. You can see that we have 7 AIM-120Cs, and I put 1 Bravo on there just so you could see what the distinguishment was. As usual, let's go ahead and jump into some controls real quick. Now, we should have already added these controls, but just to make sure, I'm going to throw them in here anyway. So first ones we want is number 2. These are the number pads, by the way, number row above our letter keys. So 2, we have beyond visual range. 3 for close air combat vertical scan mode. 4 for close air combat bore mode. 6 for the longitudinal missile aiming mode or flood mode. You want the delta key on your keyboard mat for the weapon change. Allows you to cycle through your various stores. And obviously weapons release for right, alt, and space. All the rest we should have already had mapped as we covered them in the radar tutorials. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. I've already brought a target up. As you can see, we're currently tracking at approximately 40 nautical miles. First thing we're going to do is actually hit 2 on our keyboard, which will bring us into beyond visual range mode. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and lock our target. Actually, I'm going to unlock him for just a second and pause and real briefly go over a couple things that has changed here. So let's go ahead and focus on the HUD for a second here. You can see this hashed circle here. This is the field of view for the seeker on the AMRAAM. Now, this is currently in visual mode, okay? Meaning that the seeker is going to track anything that's inside this circle that's inside 10 miles. Okay, so what this is it's your targeting cue. Okay, it's a way for you to visually target targets, and we'll go over how to use this in visual range mode. This is essentially flood mode is what this is, okay, in its current setting. Down here at the bottom left we have the A indicating the AMRAAM. It will always be an alpha for AMRAAM. You can see that we have 7 variants of the, or excuse me, 7 missiles of the Charlie variant. Okay, if we were to switch to the Bravo, so I'll unpause for a quick second. I'll press Delta on our keyboard. Now if we repause, notice that we still have the A for the AMRAAM. We have 1 for the number of missiles, and it is the Bravo model. Underneath we have our current Mach setting at 0.729, our current G load and maximum G load of the aircraft. We still see that we have waypoint 1 selected with an estimated arrival of 12 minutes based on current airspeed. Alright, so now let's get into what everybody's been waiting for. Go ahead and unpause. Let's go ahead and lock our target up. And actually before I do that, I'm going to bring our scan range down to 40. Come up here and let's lock them up. Now let's pause for a second and see what all we have. Okay, so let's go ahead and pause the camera. Now we talked about a lot of this before, but we'll go ahead and go through it one more time just to make sure we're all on the same page. We can see up here in the top left we have our current target airspeed. We can see that he has a head-on aspect. Okay, he's coming right at us. Okay, and target heading is 0 degrees. Essentially he's heading due north. Okay. At the left side here again, just like before, we have our target's current altitude is currently at an even 16,000 feet. Here we also see the AMRAAM field of view cue. Okay, but we've added something here. Down here in the bottom right we have the steering dot. Okay, now what the steering dot does is this is the steering that must take place for the aircraft in order to get a probable kill based on its current position. What you want is you want this steering dot to be as close to the center of the circle as possible before you fire the missile. Okay, this is called the ASC circle, is what it's called. Okay, the ASC circle shows the maximum steering error probability. Okay, so the further the steering dot is outside of the circle, the more likely your missile is going to miss, is a good way to look at this. All right, I'm trying to keep this basic. Okay, down here in the bottom left, we have single target track, just like we saw before, a ground speed of 449 knots. The target is currently locked up, but the IFF is unable to identify it as of the current, so we have unknown. This here is the missile pre-launch timer. Okay, and essentially what that is the proper definition is pre-launch time to missile intercept. If we were to fire the missile right now off the rails, it would take approximately 39 seconds to reach its target. Okay, now this is an estimate, so don't put a ton of weight into it, but it's pretty close. Okay, then obviously down here in the bottom left, we have the target's current bearing to us and his current distance. He's at 31 nautical miles. Now let's get into the right side, as there's quite a bit of information here. Okay, so up here at the top right here, we see this triangle. Okay, this is RPI, or maximum range of probability intercept. Okay, so max range of probability intercept, meaning that as long as the target, okay, so you'll be looking at this here, we should have a closure. So this is the target's position to us. When this is, as long as it's past this triangle here, and the target does not maneuver, does not change speed, does not change altitude, does not do anything, as long as he's within this range here, from top to bottom, you can see, the missile has a high probability to strike the target. Now, if we look at it right now, he's way outside that range. So if we were to fire the missile from this range, there's no chance in heck. Okay, it would never make it to it. Okay, so that's the way to look at that part. Then what we have down here, okay, on our next line here, is the RTR, or range, turn, and run. Okay, that's what that stands for. Okay, indicates the maximum launch range against a target that is currently maneuvering or trying to evade you. Okay, so this is the, again, high probability of striking a target that is currently maneuvering defensively. Okay, and that's what's inside this box here. And down here at the very, very bottom here, if you see this little line down here at the bottom, that is the RMIN. The absolute minimum range at which this missile should be deployed is the best way to look at it. Now, if you do get into this range, if you get this close, you probably want to be looking at switching weaponry, you know, going to guns possibly if you come down to that point. All right, so that covers everything on the VSD for current distance. Now let's go ahead and jump up to the HUD and talk about it for a second. Okay, now let's talk about what we're seeing up here. Okay, so here, just like we saw before, is the seeker field of view. Since the ASC circle shows you, as I told you before, the steering error probability. Okay, so here's our steering dot like we saw before. Okay, anytime this is outside this circle, the missile is more likely to miss. It means that it's going to have to make, this is the correction the missile is going to have to make in order to strike the target. Okay, so what you want is you want this steering dot to be as close to the center of this circle, just like we saw on the radar, as you can when you fire the missile. This line right here is the angle off line. What this indicates is the target's positioning to us and his reference. Okay, so, and we'll see that here, down here, we see the H for the head-on aspect. Okay, and we see that tail coming right at us. Okay, if this tail were pointed up, this would reference a T. Okay, showing a tail aspect, meaning that we are coming in behind him. Okay, and if it was off to the left or the right, you would see an L or an R for a left or right aspect. Now, as far as the ASE goes, okay, as you get closer, okay, as the distance between you and your enemy target decreases, okay, this circle is going to get larger and larger and larger, essentially meaning that you have more room for error. Okay, the missile is going to have to, or the larger the circle gets, the less action the pilot has to take to get the missile on cue, okay, or on target. And then down here we have our targeting cue, okay, or target designator cue, excuse me. Okay, this is the target's reference in space to us. Okay, so we can see that he's got a slight right aspect off us, but he's head on. Okay, so he's coming off on the right side. Now, just like what we saw in the VSD, okay, all this is the radar scale from top to bottom. It's the same thing that we see down here. So there's our 40 from top to bottom. There's our 40 top to bottom, okay? So it's just a representation of what the radar is currently displaying. Again, this will change just like with the radar based on what you have your current scan range set to, or your, I should say, display range set to is more accurate. Okay, so if you had your VSD set to 80 nautical miles, this would be an 80, 20, etc. Okay? We still see the target's current position. All right, he's currently closing in on us. We have a 795 knot closer rate. Okay, here is the RPI line. Okay, the maximum range to fire the missile on against a non-maneuvering, non-variable target. Okay, here we have our RTR, the top of our RTR, okay, range to turn and run. So RTR, range, turn, and run. So this quadrant here, oh, excuse me, right here. So here's our RTR line from top to bottom. Okay, anything when this Q is inside these much brighter and much shorter yellow bars or green bars, okay, this is our RTR. This is where you want to fire the missile ideally. And down here at the very bottom, just like we talked about before, you can see our minimum range, okay, the minimum range at which the missile should be launched. Now, guys, I got to tell you, if he reaches right here, he's right on top of you, okay? He's right in your face, okay? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unpause, let him get a bit closer. We're going to switch back to our Charlie, so I'm going to hit Delta on our keyboard. Notice it's changed. Now, look at that too. Okay, I want you guys to sort of see the difference here. Watch the RTR and RPI lines and watch the steering dot between the AIM-120 Charlie and the AIM-120 Bravo. So I'm going to unpause. Now notice the Charlie. Okay, the Charlie, okay, you have more room for error. Okay, notice the steering dot moves closer to the circle. Okay, notice your RPI and RTR lines go up. Okay, so remember I told you that the Charlie is better at longer range. That's why these went up. Okay, the longer range on the missile allows it to fire a lot sooner. Okay, so here's what we're going to do here is I'm going to steer the aircraft towards the target. Okay, we've got our steering dot inside the center of our Q, but now we're going to start coming right in at him. Okay, and remember, as I said before, let's go ahead and pause for a second. Our circle, our ASC circle is getting larger. Our steering dot is now inside the circle. A lot of people say that you have to put it right over the W. The reason why they're doing it is because typically the aircraft datum, okay, that's what this W is, remember, is typically right about the center of the ASC circle if you guys look at it, okay? And that's why they reference that. But it's the circle that you're actually concerned with, not so much as the datum. The datum is just a good reference point. The other thing you want is you want your targeting Q, or your target designator Q, to be inside the ASC circle as well. Okay? Those are the two parameters that you want to have happen. You want steering dot inside ASE, and you want target designator inside ASE before you let that missile roll. And obviously you want to be inside, at the very least, the RPI line. Okay, and down here at the bottom, we also see our range, 24.8 nautical miles to target, and just like we saw before, here is the missile launch, pre-launch timer. Okay, so if we were to launch the missile now, it would take approximately 27 seconds to reach the target. Okay, now if we go down to our radar real quick, let's see. Okay, so we finally closed in the range enough where now we've been able to identify it as a MiG-29, and again, just like we saw in the HUD, 27 seconds. Okay, we have his bearing of 186 degrees, distance of 24 nautical miles, just like before. Okay, and you can also see the ASE circle is growing on the VSD as well. Steering dot now inside, target tracking inside the ASE on the VSD. Now remember, this is just range, okay? All this is a visual representation of where we are. We still have to steer the aircraft to the target. So here's what we're going to do. Go back to a default view here. As we steer the target closer inside the AC circle, I want you guys to keep an eye on these yellow lights. Okay, these yellow lights are your firing cue lights. Okay, they tell you when the system has reached a firing solution. Okay, so what we're going to do, unpause. I'm going to steer the aircraft datum or the target designator into it. Now we're coming right in at them. Okay, steering dots right over the aircraft datum. We're closing the distance, closing the distance. We are now inside RPI. Okay, so we're just about to come inside it. If you guys look at right here, we're just barely inside. All right, so keep tracking for a second. All right, and there. So we're now far enough inside the RPI line that the computer has been able to acquire a firing solution. Okay, so if we were to Fox 3 right now, and as long as the aircraft does not turn against us or turn to evade, the missile should strike the target. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and Fox 3. So there goes our missile. Now let's pause for a second. There we go. That's what I wanted. Let's zoom in a bit. Now we've got some new indication coming up. So we still have our missile intercept timer at approximately 16 seconds, but some of this has changed. Okay, this is if we were to fire the next missile. Okay, so with our current missile, notice that we have a T and 14. Okay, what the T indicates is the time until the missile self-acquires the target, until its onboard radar acquires the target. Okay, so this is the target timer. Okay, is the best way to look at this. Once this expires and goes down to 0, we will then be able to turn and run. Okay, at that point the missile has taken over, its onboard radar system has taken over, and we can now turn and leave the target. Okay, so it's the post-launch missile time to active and time to intercept. So this is the post-launch time to active timer, and here we have the post-launch time to intercept timer. So in 14 seconds, the missile's active radar will then acquire the target, and in approximately 28 seconds, the missile will impact the target as long as it doesn't maneuver. So let's go ahead and watch that and play it out. Okay, so 1 second. Okay, notice the T has gone away. The M has now moved. The intercept timer. T is gone. This is what I'm sure if you guys have ever been in a multiplayer server, you've heard someone mention that the missile has gone pitbull. That is what has happened now. The missile has now gone pitbull, meaning that its onboard radar has taken over tracking of the target, meaning that we, being the pilot, can turn and run. We don't have to track the target anymore. Okay? And then in 12 seconds, the missile is going to impact. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so remember this is just an estimate, so +1. We're about +5 here. Keep watching. About +10 seconds almost. And look at the missile starting to lift up to hold its altitude. And aircraft strike. Okay, so splash 1. And I don't even know if he's actually down. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to fire again on him. We're significantly closer. Okay, let's take a look at what that looks like. Notice that now we're in the RTR line. Okay, we're right smack in the middle of it. So even if he turns and runs, we're still going to stick him. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go Fox 3. Now, notice that there was no T on this one. Okay, we had no time to active timer. Okay, that means that the missile went pitbull as soon as it went off the rails. The second we fired it, the missile was able to acquire the target and no longer needs any guidance from us. So we have an impact in 3 seconds. And splash 1. That time he's dead. Okay, I turned the labels on for you guys. I record in 4K, so I'm hoping you guys are able to see all of this stuff. All right, and there you can see that we finally broke radar contact, and we now went back into a search mode. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reset, put a couple of aircraft in the air, and show you how to track using TWS. All right, guys, we're back and set up. We go ahead and pause the screen for a second. As you can see, I've gone ahead and activated 4 targets. We have 4 targets inbound on us, all about 15 to 16,000 feet. We are already in TWS mode. You can see down here in the bottom left as we're in track while scan. Okay. So what I'm going to show you on this one is how to engage multiple targets using TWS. Okay, now I want to remind you guys that TWS has its limitations. It's really cool because you can select multiple targets, we can employ multiple weapons, put pressure on multiple targets all at the same time. But please remember, one of the risks here that we will not see, these aircraft are coming at us are just drones. They're not going to turn and run. They're not going to engage us. Okay, that's a great environment for using TWS, something that's not going to shoot back or turn and run from you. That is not the case in the real world when we're out there flying in DCS and going against live targets. Okay, so keep this in mind when you go to use this. Don't get too excited to jump up. Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to kill 4 targets all at once. Okay, remember that the radar strength is significantly less. Remember that the radar tracking is significantly less effective. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get after it. So the first thing we're going to do is put ourselves into beyond visual range. Now, notice what happened. Since I was in TWS initially, okay, and was not in beyond visual range first, what it did is it reset the radar. Okay, so the radar currently, if we were to lock a target, would go into single target track. We don't want that, so we're going to unlock, and you can see that even though we're in the 30-degree scan range, we still have to hit our TWS button again. So now we're back in track while scan. Now here's what we're going to do. I'm going to mouse over one, bug him. So he has now been identified as the PDT, okay, primary designated target. His information is going to be displayed over here. He's the one that we're tracking here. He's the one with the current missile intercept timer. He's the one with our current bearing and range, okay? So, but we're going to keep on going, and we're going to bug the next one. And grab the next one. And grab the next one. Up to 4 simultaneous targets. Okay, we can see now that the IFF has identified it as a MiG-29. This is our primary target. Notice our steering dot. We're going to turn the aircraft, so our steering dot and target designated Q is inside the ASC circle. We're approaching our RPI distance. You can see that here. We're just coming through RPI, and you can see that here. So as long as he doesn't turn and run, we have a decent probability to hit the target. But in TWS, we're going to go ahead and wait for the RTR. Okay? Remember I said since the radar's slightly less effective, we want to make sure that we give our missile the highest chance to hit its target. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the scan range to 20 nautical miles, get a better view of what's happening. Alright, we're approaching the RTR. Now, I'm going to begin cycling through our targets. So, first, Fox 3. Okay, notice that our primary designated target has now switched. Okay, so we're going to come over here, do the same thing. Fox 3 again. Missile went pitbull right off the rail. Okay, it's now selected the next target. Fox 3 again. And now we're going to come down here, find this last guy. Okay, stern in tight here, we're right on top of him. And Fox 3 again, he's really close, just inside the range. I don't know if we're going to hit this one. Nope, and oh, yep, it got him. Alright, cool. Alright, so that's one of the cool advantages of TWS. Now, what would have happened, we splashed all 4 targets, which is great. Great scenario, okay? All 4 targets were hit, all 4 missiles tracked their targets without issue. Now, let's say, for example, we had fired at a longer range. Okay? After you fired on the 4th target, okay, what the radar is going to do, if the first target is still being tracked and is still alive, your primary target will then switch back to the first target. It will keep going back through the cycle until all 4 targets have been eliminated or are no longer being tracked. Okay, so we fire 1, 2, 3, 4. After we fire on target 4, the radar is going to automatically switch back to target 1, as long as he's still alive and we still have acquisition of the target and the radar. Okay, so that is one of the cool features about firing under TWS. You can engage up to 4 targets simultaneously. If you bug a 5th target, okay, if you try to lock onto a 5th target, your first target will no longer be primary target. It will then switch to your second target, and the 5th target will be put into the 4 target queue. Okay, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, guys. So essentially, if you have 5 targets, you bug the first 4. If you try to bug the 5th, 1 will be dropped from the firing queue, 2 will become the primary, and the 5th will be now number 4 on the firing solution. Okay. All right, so that covers track wall scan. Now what we're going to do is reset again and take a look at vertical scan mode. All right, guys, so we're back, and now we are tracking a target that is currently heading away from us, and we're going to lock him up in vertical scan mode. So just like before with BVR, vertical scan mode, we're going to want our radar on. Now the cool thing about these modes is if your radar's off and we go into vertical scan mode, notice the radar automatically turns on. Okay, sets itself to 10 nautical miles. Vertical scan mode, Boresight mode, and flood mode all have a max cap of 10 miles. You cannot change the elevation of the radar cone, and you cannot change the distance that it's scanning at. Okay, now we've got our target out there. You can see, I hope, I turned the labels on for you guys, so I really hope you can see that. I know I'm in 4K, so as I mentioned before, if it's hard to see, I apologize. But we've got him out there, and I want to talk about real quick before we go after him how this works. So vertical scan mode, what it does is it scans in literally exactly like I said, a vertical path, okay, and will lock up any target that's within that range. And what that range is from -2 degrees, so 2 degrees below your horizon line, so approximately right here, give or take, up to 70 degrees above. So the best way to describe is it's going to lock anything that's about twice the distance of your HUD. Okay, if your HUD were to come up to here, up to about where the mirror is, that's how far that it'll pick up. Okay, and so I'm going to show you guys real quick what that looks like. It's real simple. So there's our target. We're going to go ahead and dive in on him. Notice he's inside the ASE. He's inside the AMRAAM's field of view. We're going to bring him on that line, and bam. Okay, so we've now locked him up. You've got your firing cue, our steering dots inside the circle. We have our target designator cue inside the ASE circle as well. We can see that our target's distance, okay, is already well within inside RTR. Okay, notice you don't have an RPI line on this one. Okay, at 10 nautical miles, he's in RTR. Okay, and then you can see your RMIN range right there. Okay, now this is a 10-mile scan range, so remember, at about 1 mile, you don't want to be using the AMRAAM anymore. You want to be switching to guns at that range. But we still have our pre-launch missile timer, approximately 17 seconds to track target. We have our target. Let me get out of this turn real quick so we can see that stupid pitch scale's in the way. So I'll unpause. Let's bring him around. There we go. We can see that we're on a tail aspect to target. Okay, we can still see our speed. We're currently at Mach 1.013. We still have our AMRAAMs. Okay, all the same information that we saw before. Now, when we fire this missile, and we can see it down here just like before. Okay, MiG-29 still identifies the IFF, still tracks it, identifies what it is. We still have our timer. Current bearing to target 185 for 7 miles. Okay, target's heading on a tail course of 180. Okay, at 349 knots. So we're going to go ahead and bring it on. And we're going to put our steering dot right on his ass and Fox 3. Missile timer now at 13 seconds. And we can actually break away. And splash 1. He's going down. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and reset the aircraft. I hope that was real simple. If you guys have any questions, by all means, just let me know. You can also see down here in the bottom right real quick that you are in vertical scan. Okay, that's what this indication here is. So let's go ahead and come back around and we'll go into Boresight. Alright, and now we're going to go into Boresight mode, which will be number 4 on our keyboard, and bring him around. It is so weird tracking a target in track IR. I'm used to flying in VR when I'm engaging. And there's our boy right out there. So all I'm going to do is turn. We still have our ASC seeker for the circle for the AMRAAM, but what I'm going to do is put him right in that center circle, and bam, target locked. Just like before, target identified. And just like before, if the radar is off, okay, it won't track. Okay, so if we go down into vertical scan, there it is again, or a Boresight, excuse me, radar comes back to life, reacquire the target, Fox 3. Splash 1. Okay, target down. So all the same steps always apply no matter what mode you're in. You still want to get your steering dot in. You still want to get your target designator inside the ASE circle. Pay attention to the angle off line up at the top. Alright, and for one more time, let's go ahead and go into flood mode. So we'll go into 6 here. So here's our flood mode. Now notice what happens when the radar is off, or the radar is on. Okay, all this is puts us right back into Boresight. Okay, but if we hit 6 again, okay, turns it all off. Select our missile. This is flood mode, and that's the visual mode. Okay, now let me show you something that's dangerous about visual mode. So F10, radar contact 4. There he is. So all I'm going to do is put my target right smack in the middle of that bad boy, and I'm going to let a missile ride. Notice we didn't get any tracking. We got no target designators. We got no steering dot. We got no angle off. We got absolutely nothing. All we did was put our target right smack in that circle and fire the missile. And we'll go ahead and track our missile. Ooh, doggy. Now, I know that right from the start, because we had the labels on, that every one of you hopefully caught the big mistake there. At no point did I indicate that we just fired on a friendly target. Okay, we just shot down our own guy. Now let's talk about flood mode for a second, what it does. Flood mode, and the advantage to flood mode is you can use your weapon systems without bringing your radar online. Okay, you still have the 10 nautical mile limit. Okay, it will still only work within 10 nautical miles. But what it allows you to do, and that's why you have the ASE circle, okay, or actually not the ASE circle, well, yes, the ASE circle. That's why you more specifically have the missile's field of view. Okay, and this only works for the AMRAAM. Flood mode is an AMRAAM missile only, or AMRAAM mode only. Okay, because your AIM-7 Sparrow requires, and we'll go into that in the next tutorial, but the AIM-7 requires radar guidance from the aircraft. Okay, so flood mode only works with the AMRAAM, but the advantage is inside 10 nautical miles you can have your radar off, which means that your bandit will not know he's being tracked. Okay, if you're coming in behind someone and you don't want to alert him that you're there, and you don't want to tell him that you've locked him up, okay, you can just come in behind him, go into flood mode, missiles or radars off, and fire your missile. And here's how this works. If you have 4 targets, okay, or 2 targets, let's just go with 2. you have two targets that are right in front of you. You go into flood mode. You fire your AMRAAM. The AMRAAM is going to do, first it's going to try to acquire the closest target. If the targets are at the exact same distance, okay, so they're flying right off the wing from each other, it will then go after the target with the largest radar signature. Okay, the reason why you have to be within 10 miles is because the only radar that's being used is from the missile itself. Okay, so when the missile fires, your enemy will get an alert at that point. But you got to think about that. By the time you realize you've just been fired upon inside 8 miles on a missile that goes almost Mach 5, or Mach 4, excuse me, you don't have a whole lot of time to react. You're pretty much screwed at that point. So the advantage, again, is that you can fire undetected, and they still won't know where you came from. Okay, if you launch that sucker and then turn, they're not going to know you were there. Okay, if you do it right. Okay, but the disadvantage is the AMRAAM does not have IFF. Okay, it is not going to look and see, is this a friend or foe, as you just saw. It is going to go after whatever it sees. Okay, and that's why we have the Seeker's field of view up on the HUD. You put a target in there, you fire the missile, and basically you're saying, hey, whatever's in this target, whatever's in this circle, whatever's closest, hit it. Okay, so you want to be real careful using flood mode. There are a couple advantages to it. One of them being, God forbid, someone takes out your radar cone. Okay, your radar's damaged, your radar won't function. Now, typically your HUD's dead at that point too. But you can still do the same thing. Okay, I've actually tested this theory. Even if your HUD is gone, and you put an enemy that you know is within 10 miles inside the boundaries of your HUD, and you fire that son of a gun in flood mode, it'll go after it. But let's say you fire that missile, and right as you fire that missile in flood mode, you have a wingman who cuts in front of the missile. Guess who the missile's going to go after? If the missile hasn't already acquired an enemy target, it's going to steer towards your buddy. Okay, so be really cautious when using flood mode. Okay, I can't stress this enough. I see it happen all the time on the multiplayer servers. People freak out, hey man, IFF, hey man, and I always try to defend them because I know exactly what's happening. They're using flood mode. Okay, and that's one of the easiest ways to take out one of your own. Okay, unless you are 100% positive that the only targets in front of you are hostile, do not use flood mode. Okay. But really cool aspect of it. It is fun to be able to it's really handy in a dogfight. If you don't have time to, you don't want to sit there and try to use vertical scan mode. You don't want to use your Boresight. You just want to be able to turn, see your bandits and let it loose. Flood mode your buddy. Okay. Let's see here. Am I missing anything? So I know it's sort of a long tutorial. I know it's sort of choppy. If I need to go over anything in particular, guys, please put them in the comments below. Other than that, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. As usual, make sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Really helps me out a lot. I also want to take a quick second and say thank you to all of you guys who have been watching and continuing to grow the channel. It's really a lot of fun for me. It's exciting to see the numbers continue to climb. And honestly, I don't think I've heard a single negative comment about the tutorials I've made. That's really heartwarming. It really makes me want to get back in and do it again. I know I'm sure that eventually they'll start to come as the channel grows, but to those of you who have been positive and giving me great feedback, and you're really keeping me wanting to go. Kurt, wanted to give a specific shout out to you. Really appreciate you congratulating me on my house, man. I wanted to make sure I announced that publicly. That was really awesome. Until the next time, guys, once again, like and subscribe. This is Overkill. I'll catch you guys next time.